Stefan's sister secretly installed surveillance in our bedroom, and he advised me not to make a fuss about it. This time I didn't argue with them. Instead, I turned around and returned all the gifts I had bought for them. A month later, Stefan called me for the first time. "Esther, it's about time you stop this." But a man's light laugh came from the other end of the phone. "Mr. Stefan, you should coax your girlfriend early, or else she will become someone else's wife." Stefan gritted his teeth, let Esther answer the phone. Lucas leaned down and kissed me. "She can't, she's busy giving me a checkup right now." Ding! This novel reminds you to click the subscribe button in the bottom right corner to read the complete novel. It was the 3rd year of being with Stefan. He took me to meet his only relative. At that time, he promised sincerely, "Don't worry, my sister is very nice. You two will definitely get along well." 3 months later, I wanted to slap my naive self who believed him back then. Men's words are nothing but lies. His sister is indeed nice. But only to him, her brother, she's especially nice. Nice to the point where she has no sense of boundaries between men and women. I looked at the surveillance camera I just found in the bedroom and couldn't hold back anymore. "Stefan, your sister is going too far. This is a complete invasion of our privacy." He just frowned slightly. "Esther, what she did was a bit much, but she was just worried about us, don't take it to heart. Besides, she'll be your sister-in-law in the future too, don't use that kind of accusatory tone with her." Mary, who was beside us, rolled her eyes. "What's wrong with me installing a camera? I'm just worried because you two haven't gotten your marriage certificate yet. Afraid that you might be fighting because of relationship problems, thinking that I could mediate if needed." I clenched my hands tightly, my nails digging into my palms painfully. I really wanted to dig a hole and bury my blind self from back then. Sure enough, men's sweet words can't be trusted. This time, I didn't argue with them. I was just glad that I tried living together before marriage. Otherwise, if I found out about the oddities of these siblings after getting married, I'd be at a bigger loss. I took a few deep breaths, nodded, and agreed, "Fine." I glanced at Mary beside me and then smiled at Stefan. "Go find a girl who will agree with everything you two say and has no temper to marry. Just not sure if your next boyfriend will tolerate having a clingy sister-in-law." Seeing Mary's face change, my mood improved a lot. Stefan suddenly grabbed my hand. "This joke isn't funny at all." I shook off his hand and raised my eyebrows with a smile. "I'm not joking. Stefan, let's break up. I've tolerated his sister's lack of boundaries up until now. Every time I rode in Stefan's car, I had to sit in the back seat while she took the passenger seat. She entered my room without knocking and demanded that the bed sheets be ones she prepared, saying her brother liked them. And now she even installed surveillance in my private space. Did she really think I had no temper? When it becomes unbearable, there's no need to bear it anymore. I grabbed my bag and left, slamming the door on my way out. As soon as I got downstairs, I heard hurried footsteps behind me. Stefan, with his long legs, blocked my way, his eyes dark. "Have you had enough? Come back with me." I chuckled and took out my phone. "Mr. Stefan, if you keep harassing me, I'll call the police." Before moving in with Stefan, I had my own apartment. Back at the apartment, I contacted a luxury goods reseller. I sold all the bags and shoes I had just bought as birthday gifts for them. After some thought, I sent a message to my boss. I decided to take all the accumulated vacation days. Apart from carrying my laptop, I didn't bring anything else. Then I booked a late-night flight to the end city for a business trip. The business trip and vacation were secondary. Mostly, I wanted to relax and visit some old classmates. The night after I arrived in the end city happened to be the class reunion. Just as I walked in and sat down, a tall figure pushed the door open and walked in. Several female classmates' eyes lit up immediately. "Lucas? Weren't you not coming?" "Yeah, top student, how come you have time to grace us today?" "I happened to be free, and when I heard you were gathering here, I thought I'd join the fun." "You don't mind, do you?" Lucas said, his gaze sweeping around the room, pausing for a moment at a certain spot before slowly moving away. "Of course, we don't mind. Come, have a seat." He arrived late, and the only seat available was next to me. Lucas naturally sat down beside me. It's been a long time. I turned to look at him. The tailored shirt outlined his broad shoulders and narrow waist, and his long legs were wrapped in black trousers. Compared to the young man in a white shirt in my memory, he now seemed more mature. Perhaps no one knew. The Lucas before me was the one I had longed for but could never have in my youth. I still remember that summer evening 10 years ago, by the campus lake. Just as I had gathered the courage and was about to step out from behind a willow tree to confess to him, I heard him rejecting another girl. Sorry, I already like someone else. My steps halted abruptly. After that, I kept my distance from him. I didn't dare to think that the person he liked was me. After all, apart from collaborating on a project, we had no other interactions. Not long after, he went abroad to study. It was around that time that Stefan appeared in my life. Bringing my thoughts back, I smiled slightly and extended my hand to him. Long time no see, Lucas. Lucas smiled and shook my hand. For some reason. When I withdrew my hand, his fingers instinctively tightened around mine before letting go a moment later. After several rounds of drinks, the gathering was about to end. Lucas was one of the few people still sober. He was in charge of arranging for everyone who was drunk to get home. I watched through my drunken haze as he helped each person into their cars. Until the last guy was sent off. I didn't know if it was intentional or not. I was left for last. Lucas walked towards me with his long legs. As he got closer, I had to look up at him. I took a deep breath, trying to focus. Lucas, did you call a taxi for me? For some reason, he didn't answer, just looked down at me. Is there something on my face? Instinctively, I raised my hand. The next moment, my wrist was caught. I'll take you home. I was stunned for a moment. Before I could react, Lucas had already picked me up and put me into the car that had just stopped beside us. I sat next to Lucas. Drunk and drowsy. My gaze fell on his long legs crossed beside me. The veins on his large hands were slightly bulging, his fingers long and well-defined. Such hands looked very capable. While I was lost in thought, Lucas suddenly spoke. Why did you come to N City alone? Stefan didn't come with you? It took me a while to react. Oh, him. We broke up. I mentioned him with a light tone. Lightning flashed outside the car window. Lucas's expression didn't change much, but his eyes darkened. Maybe the car was too stuffy. I saw him raise his hand to loosen his tie and collar. A glance revealed his slightly exposed collarbone. Further down, a deep shadow. I couldn't tell, but his body seemed in good shape. Maybe it was the drunkenness, or maybe it was seeing my first love after so many years. My heart felt a bit itchy. In my daze, my fingers somehow landed on his collarbone. I felt a bit embarrassed as if I had been burned and was about to withdraw my mischievous hand. Thank you for taking me home. His gaze darkened suddenly, grabbing my hand. His Adam's apple rolled violently, his voice hoarse. Is this how you thank me? I couldn't pull my hand back, so I stayed still. I retorted, I'm just curious how you've kept in shape all these years. Besides, I only touched him a little, no need to call the police on me, right? But seeing Lucas's darkened eyes, I realized I had overthought it. He held my hand on his collarbone, moving it down as he leaned towards me. Do you want to check more thoroughly? His deep voice carried a unique allure. My mind went blank. The fiery touch of my fingertips, the pounding heartbeat, made my thoughts a chaotic mess. My fingers were gradually guided down to his lean, strong waist. His muffled groan made my last bit of consciousness surrender. Lucas pressed me into the car seat, kissing me wantonly. With the drunkenness surging, I was already dizzy, and his dominant kiss nearly took my breath away. The driver. I gasped, cheeks flushed, body soft. My arms tightly wrapped around his neck. My shirt hem had been pulled out by him, the waist of my clothes a mess. The buttons on my collar were somehow undone. He looked down at me, his voice slightly hoarse. There's a partition, he can't see. Wearing his jacket, I walked into the hotel side by side with him. After swiping the key card to open the room door, I inserted it to turn on the power. I turned around and saw Lucas standing at the door, looking down at me. Esther, are you sure you want to continue? I looked up at him, took a step forward, and wrapped my fingers around his tie, starting from the collar of his shirt. Why not? We're both adults. Why can't we indulge just once? Besides, I didn't get him 10 years ago, so now I'll make up for that. I effortlessly pulled him into the room. In my other hand was a button that had fallen off my shirt. Lucas suddenly laughed. He closed the door behind him with one hand. His other hand gently caressed my face, finally stopping at my chin. You said it. His voice suddenly softened. I let you go once before, but this time I won't let you go again. Before I could think about what he meant, he had already pressed down on me forcefully. I thought he would at least be gentle the first time. I didn't expect that we wouldn't even make it out of the bathroom. He charged ahead like an inexperienced boy. The bathtub was slippery and hard, and my back hurt from being rubbed against it. I held onto him tightly, biting his shoulder as I cried. It hurts. Lucas, are you an animal? His hot hand supported my back, holding me tightly. Then he lowered his head from my earlobe downward. Breathing heavily, he kissed me. As he moved his attention to my neck. Esther, my Esther. From the bathroom to the bed, I couldn't stop laughing. Finally catching my breath, I turned to look at him. Lucas, are you still a virgin? Do you even know what you're doing? Lucas's face darkened, looking both embarrassed and angry. I blinked, suddenly realizing the implications of my words. In the next moment, I regretted saying something so provocative. His gaze was too intense as he stared at me. He lowered his head and kissed my still swollen lips heavily. Esther, I'll make sure you know if I do. When I woke up, it was already the next day. As I left the room, Lucas had already called for room service. Breakfast was laid out on the table. He glanced at me, awake? Come have breakfast. He was wearing the same clothes as yesterday, with a few buttons of his shirt undone, revealing a small patch of skin. His sleeves were rolled up, exposing his strong forearms. I squinted, thinking about the fierce intensity of last night. Sweat trickled down his muscular chest, past his defined abs, and finally disappeared into the V-line. I couldn't help but swallow and looked away. It wasn't until I sat down that I noticed. The breakfast included the brand of milk I usually drink. I remembered he was lactose intolerant. I looked at him in surprise. Can you drink milk? Lucas smiled slightly. No, it's for you. I guessed right, it was specifically prepared for me. His long, slender fingers held the knife, cutting the toast and placing it on my plate. It was these hands that gave me the gentlest comfort and the most thrilling sensations last night. Although the beginning wasn't perfect, the outcome was still pretty good. I sipped the milk thoughtfully. I never expected my first day of reuniting with Lucas to be like this. It reminded me of something I almost forgot. I have to go somewhere for work later, so I won't be able to see you off. I'll take you. Don't you have to go to work? Lucas turned his head to look at me. Not today. Do bosses always go to work so capriciously? The next moment, he reached out and wiped the corner of my mouth with his thumb. Before I could react, I saw him put the finger that had touched my lips into his mouth. I clearly saw his tongue lick his thumb. The bread, it tastes good. I squinted, took a bite of the bread. I wrapped my arms around his neck and pulled him down. Tilting my head, I pushed the piece of bread in my mouth into his. If it's good, then eat more. When I received Lucas's call, I had just walked out of the client's building. I had been working overtime in G-City for a long time for this project. This client was the most difficult I had ever encountered. I thought I would need to spend more time here. But unexpectedly, after only 2 days of negotiations at the client's company, the contract was signed. Thanks to my excellent business skills, I earned a lot of money. My boss was particularly generous with my vacation, so I extended my leave for a few more days. This, I suppose, is the so-called top sales privilege. Esther, what do you want to eat tonight? Lucas's voice came through, soothing all my fatigue from the past few days. I found a resting area to sit down and rubbed my sore ankles. You decide, I'm easy. I just want to find a place to lie down right now. How about a massage? There's a place I've been to a few times, the masseurs are good, and they have various snacks. You should like it. Before I was with Stefan, I always liked to find a SPA place when I was tired, getting a massage while eating. After moving in with Stefan, his mother once said, "Can't you soak your feet and get a massage at home? Going out is a waste of money." After that, I never allowed myself to enjoy it properly again. I didn't expect Lucas to share the same hobby as me. All right then, I'll follow your plan. I'll come to pick you up now. Okay. Lucas took me to an old store in N City that had been open for many years. The store was large and decorated in a classical style. Business was particularly good, it wasn't even 7 o'clock, and there were already quite a few customers. I changed into SPA clothes and returned to the private room. I was stunned. Lucas was happily chatting with a well-dressed woman. The woman looked to be in her early 40s. I squinted my eyes. At that moment, Lucas saw me and got up to walk towards me. I leaned over and whispered in his ear, "It seems like today is not convenient. I'll get another room." His face suddenly darkened. He grabbed my wrist. "Want to leave?" No way. I didn't react in time and was pulled inside by him. "Mom, this is the Esther I mentioned to you." Wait. Mom? What's going on? My brain was still processing. Lucas's mother grabbed my hand. "So, you're Esther. You're so pretty. No wonder this guy keeps thinking about you. Let me tell you, Esther, you don't know." I couldn't get a word in edgewise, so I just smiled awkwardly. As for what Lucas's mother said, I didn't really pay attention. I turned to look at Lucas again. He was already sitting across from me. "Mom, if you keep talking, you'll scare Esther away," Lucas's mother exclaimed. "Oh no! That won't do. I won't disturb you two then. Your aunt has invited me to a bar. You two have fun today, all expenses on me. Don't feel burdened. Since you're here, just relax. Your comfort is the most important." Watching Lucas's mother leave the private room, I finally came to my senses. I couldn't help but sigh. Your mother is really full of energy. She's always like this. My father goes along with her as long as she's happy. Lucas pushed a plate towards me. "Dinner will be served later. If you're hungry, have some fruit first." Looking at the cleanly peeled orange segments in front of me, I was surprised. I didn't expect someone like him, a rich kid, to handle these trivial things so well. "Breaking up with you must have made your ex-girlfriend very sad." Lucas raised an eyebrow. "When did I ever have a girlfriend? I don't even know that myself." I looked at him in surprise. "Didn't you say you had a girl you liked when you rejected confessions back in school? Did you not manage to get that girl?" Lucas's face suddenly turned dark. He stood up abruptly and locked the door. He walked towards me step by step. I was half leaning on the massage chair, unable to retreat. He grabbed my hands and pressed them against the chair. His gaze was so intense it made me a little scared. "You." Did I say something wrong?" Lucas looked down at me from above. "You're right. I didn't manage to get her back then. So, now I'm pursuing you again. Do you agree?" I looked at him in disbelief. "Wait! Are you saying that the girl you liked back then was actually me?" I was stunned. Lucas didn't answer, but his kiss carried a hint of frustration. I couldn't tell if he was angry at me or himself. In my last memory, I was being carried out of the SPA by him. A few days later, a client invited me to a business dinner. The dinner ended around 10, just about the time I had arranged to meet Lucas. I decided to sit in the hotel lobby and wait for him. He was always punctual and had never been late. As 10 o'clock approached, I grabbed my bag and headed towards the entrance. I hadn't even stepped out the door. Suddenly, a familiar voice called out from behind me. "Esther!" I turned around and saw Stefan behind me. I frowned, not wanting to acknowledge him. Stefan walked up to me unhurriedly, frowning as he looked at me. "What are you doing here?" I sneered. "Ha, Mr. Stefan, Does your family live by the sea? Why do you care so much? Stefan's expression froze, seemingly not expecting my outright rejection. He furrowed his brows slightly. I called you, why didn't you answer? Do you know how many times I called you? I looked at him calmly. I don't know, and I don't want to know. Who knows how many times he called me? I had already blocked his number. I didn't bother wasting time explaining to him. Ignoring him, I walked straight towards the door. Esther! Stefan grabbed my arm. Come back with me. Stop this tantrum, let's end this nicely and not embarrass everyone. I couldn't help but laugh. So in his eyes, this was just a childish tantrum. I shook off his hand and waved my phone. Mr. Stefan, I've already called the police. Stefan's face turned pale. Esther, are you out of your mind? I gave him a cold glance. Adults should solve their problems like adults. After saying that, I turned and walked away. Staying with him for even one more second felt like a waste of time. As soon as I stepped out of the hotel, I saw Lucas standing tall beside the car. He was wearing a black coat, with a faint red glow between his fingers. When he saw me, he smiled and extinguished his cigarette, then walked towards me. His expression was grim. The next moment, he wrapped me in his coat. All the cold was instantly blocked out. He rested his chin on my neck, but didn't say anything. I sensed something was off with his emotions. What's wrong? As soon as I asked, he lifted my chin and kissed me fiercely. I reacted by tightly hugging his waist. I could hear his dissatisfied voice in my ear. Esther, are you planning to get back with Stefan? I won't agree to it. I was stunned for a moment, and out of the corner of my eye, I saw Stefan standing at the hotel entrance. I immediately understood. I stood on tiptoe and kissed Lucas's thin lips. I said it's impossible. Do you believe me? Lucas moved his lips to my neck. If you say so, I believe you. Stefan watched as I willingly kissed another man. His face was ugly as he stood there in shock. He took a big step forward and angrily questioned. Esther, how dare you cheat on me? I snuggled closely in Lucas's arms, looking up at the man I once sincerely cared about. I sneered. Cheat on you? You need to have a girlfriend to be cheated on. Do you have one? Don't be discouraged, Mr. Stefan, even if you don't have a girlfriend, you can still have a boyfriend. Your family shouldn't mind. I stood on tiptoe and kissed Lucas's chin. Then I turned provocatively to Stefan. As you can see, I'm very busy. Now I have serious business to attend to. After saying that, I pulled Lucas and got into the car. As the car started, Lucas rolled down the window. He glanced at Stefan indifferently. If Mr. Stefan needs resources, I can introduce you. Both men and women, don't be shy. On the road, Lucas drove very fast. His expression was somber, as if he was enduring something. The car stopped at Lucas's villa, and he leaned over to help me unbuckle my seatbelt. As soon as I got out of the car, a kiss full of intense masculine scent fell on me. I was pinned against the car hood, unable to move. After a long time, he finally released my lips. He didn't let go of me, resting his chin against my neck, lightly rubbing, but he didn't speak. The tickling sensation on my neck made me laugh softly. What's wrong? Esther, are you planning to go back? What? Back to G City. I have to go back when my vacation ends, after all, my job is there. Lucas rubbed his high-nosed bridge against mine. Then I'll go with you. I caught the meaning in his words. Are you worried that I still have feelings for Stefan? Lucas lowered his eyes and didn't speak. Even if I do, I won't let you go. No matter what it takes, I'll keep you by my side. I cupped his face with both hands, pressing my forehead against his. Lucas, have a little confidence in yourself. You're my boyfriend now. I looked up at him. He was handsome, tall, and long-legged, all fitting my aesthetic perfectly. He treated me very well too. In the past few days, anything related to me, he handled personally down to the smallest detail. I opened my arms and hugged him. My head rested against his chest. His breathing was rapid, and his heartbeat was fast. His forehead pressed against mine, panting lightly by my ear. Do you know how happy I am? I buried my head in his embrace, wrapping my arms around his waist, pressing closer to him. I can tell. I'm very happy too. On the day I returned to G City, Lucas personally saw me onto the plane. Are you really not letting me go with you? I stood on tiptoe and kissed his chin lightly. I'm going back for a job competition. You wait for me in N City. A few days ago, I received an email from the company. They were opening a branch in N City and were internally recruiting a director. After much consideration, I decided to compete for the position. Not just for Lucas, but also for my own career development. The interview went smoothly, plus I had a big contract I secured this time. A week later, I received the notice that I became the director of the N City branch. I packed up my things in the company. As I was carrying a box back to the apartment, I suddenly saw a figure standing downstairs. Stefan looked at me, seeming to breathe a sigh of relief. You resigned. Since you've come to your senses, come back with me. Apologize to my sister, and we can get our marriage certificate. I glanced at him. Mr. Stefan, it looks like you're seriously ill, daydreaming in broad daylight. You should go to the hospital. I watched Stefan's face change abruptly. I didn't want to waste time with someone so delusional, so I turned to go upstairs. But footsteps followed closely behind. My heart sank. Is this ever going to end? Suddenly, a familiar figure appeared in front of me. Lucas pulled me over and shielded me in his arms. I buried my head in his chest, unable to see his expression, only hearing a stern shout. You guys, have Mr. Stefan enjoy a good cup of tea. Immediately, there was a sound of chaotic footsteps. And the noise of arguing and yelling. Lucas covered my ears. All I could see was his black shirt. I couldn't see or hear what exactly was happening. When he finally let go of me, Stefan was already gone. I looked up and gave him a big smile. Why are you here? Lucas's lips curved slightly. Do I need a reason to see my girlfriend? I took out my phone and showed him the email. Boyfriend, your girlfriend has been promoted. Did you prepare a celebration party for me? He lifted his hand and flicked my nose. It's ready. As he spoke, he took out a box from his pocket. I squinted and smiled, proposing like this is too hasty, isn't it? He opened the box and took out the ring inside. It's not a proposal. The silver ring slid slowly onto my ring finger. It's a declaration of sovereignty. In that case, I took the other ring from the box and put it on his hand. Then I also need to declare my sovereignty. I finished handling the remaining matters at the company and flew to the N City with Lucas. After resting for 2 days at his villa, he drove me to an old residential area. The car stopped under an old building. I followed him out of the car and upstairs. This is the house my grandmother left behind. My mom likes to spend weekends here, and usually, besides my dad, only I come here. He stopped in front of a household door. Holding my hand, we pressed the doorbell together. But starting today, there's also you. As soon as the doorbell rang, the door opened. Lucas's mother looked at me and smiled, treating me with the familiarity of family. Esther is here. I took out the gift I had prepared. A little token of respect. Lucas's mother accepted it with a cheerful smile. What a coincidence, I'm making some snacks. Esther, would you like to join me? I turned to look at Lucas. His eyes were full of warmth. If you want to, go ahead. I rubbed my hands together and looked at Lucas's mother. I'm a novice, I might not do well. No worries, the most important thing in making food is the heart. Besides, that boy wouldn't dare say what we make isn't delicious. The air was filled with the warmth of home. I hadn't laughed so freely in a long time. The person I love is by my side. Within reach. No arguments, no doubts. Only caring greetings and full-hearted love. As we were leaving, Lucas's mother stuffed a big box for me to take back. I was curious all the way. I turned to look at the back seat several times. Lucas was in a good mood and chuckled softly. So curious? You'll see when we get home. Back at the villa, I couldn't wait to open the gift box. 2 layers, the first layer was the snacks I made. Lucas casually picked one up. I looked at him expectantly. How is it? It's okay. Okay? The answer made me a bit disappointed. When I opened the second layer, I was instantly stunned. My cheeks flushed red. What is it? Lucas leaned over. I hurriedly turned around, trying to hide the box. Nothing, just some daily necessities. Oh my. Whose boyfriend's mother gives 5 boxes of this stuff as a gift? And uniforms. Lucas's mother's gift once again refreshed my understanding of her. Lucas's eyes darkened. He reached out and took a box. Esther, you can't refuse a gift from an elder. How about using this today? I glanced at the big words on the box. Long-lasting, classic continuation. It's not like I haven't seen it before. Who's afraid of whom? I squinted my eyes and took out the nurse uniform from the box. Would it be more appropriate if I wore this today? Dark tides surged in Lucas's eyes. Would you wear it? Do you want to see it? His breathing grew heavier. Yes. I deliberately grabbed his collar. Then you have to listen to me tonight. When I came out of the bathroom, he was already lying on the bed. The room was dimly lit, but it didn't stop me from seeing him clearly. He must have just taken a bath, the robe loosely tied around him, water droplets sliding down his chest. I swallowed, nervously and excitedly clutching the hem of my skirt. This was my first time role-playing. It was inexplicably exciting. Just as I was ready to give him a thorough examination, my phone rang. I reached to turn off the annoying ringtone. But Lucas got there first and answered the call. A familiar voice came from the phone. Esther, come back when you've had enough fun. Lucas chuckled softly. Mr. Stefan, you should coax your girlfriend early, or she might become someone else's wife. The voice on the other end erupted with gnashing teeth. Lucas? It's me. Where's Esther? Let her answer the phone. Lucas, if you dare do anything to Esther. She can't answer, she's giving me an examination. Before hanging up, Lucas kissed my forehead. And Esther isn't for you to call. Stefan, if you don't want to be invited for tea again, watch your words and actions. He tossed the phone aside, and the shock in my eyes hadn't faded. Wife. He suddenly got up and flipped me onto the bed. Grabbing my hand with the ring, he lowered his head and kissed it devoutly. Esther, I want to marry you. Would you marry me? I bit my lip tightly, feeling like I was hallucinating. I won't interfere with what you want to do, but your life must include me. My mother won't live with us. No one will force you to have children. If you want to, you can. If you don't have to. If you're unsure, I can have a lawyer draft an agreement. My heartbeat accelerated rapidly. Lucas, are you really sure? He looked serious and earnest. Yes. I decided that 10 years ago. I propped myself up to look him in the eye. My fingers intertwined with his, our fingers tightly clasped. If I say yes, then you won't have the chance to regret it. Lucas chuckled softly. I never said I would regret it. I wanted to kiss him. He suddenly leaned back to avoid it. No rush, you haven't tasted your own snacks yet. He reached for a piece of snack from the bedside table. I had made it especially for him, with his surname printed on it. Didn't you say the taste was just okay? He put the snack in his mouth. One hand cupped the back of my head, slowly leaning down. I tilted my head back, tasting a sweet flavor between our lips and teeth. When a girlfriend makes it, the taste is just okay. But when my wife makes it, it's truly delicious.